They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But as I stood in the shadows of the grand ballroom, watching my ex-wife Jessica marry the man she'd left me for, I realized revenge wasn't what I wanted at all. What I wanted was something far more satisfying: the truth. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow on the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. 200 guests had gathered to witness what society pages were calling the wedding of the year. Jessica looked radiant in her ivory Vera Wang dress, her hand clasped in Marcus Wellington's, my former business partner, my former best friend, the man who'd systematically destroyed my life while smiling to my face. But I had a secret, and in exactly 17 minutes, a guest would arrive who would shatter Jessica's perfect facade and turn her face as pale as her wedding dress. My name is David Chen, and this is the story of how my worst day became the catalyst for my greatest triumph. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, so you get notified when new interesting stories comes up. 6 months earlier, my life had been everything I'd worked for. I was 34 years old, co-owner of Chen Wellington Tech Solutions, married to the woman I'd loved since college, and on the verge of closing a deal that would make us all millionaires. Then it came crashing down. I remember the exact moment. It was a Tuesday evening, unseasonably cold for September. I'd come home early from a business trip to San Francisco, eager to surprise Jessica. Our brownstone in Brooklyn's Park Slope neighborhood glowed with warm light from the windows. I could see movement inside, Jessica's silhouette in our bedroom. But she wasn't alone. My hand froze on the doorknob as I watched through the sheer curtains. Marcus Wellington, my best friend since business school, the man who'd been best man at our wedding, was holding my wife. Not in a comforting way. In the way a man holds a woman he loves. I should have burst in. I should have confronted them. Instead, something in me went cold and calculating. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering, and sat in my car for 2 hours, watching, thinking, planning. When I finally went inside, they were sitting in the living room, fully clothed, sipping wine like old friends. Jessica jumped up, startled. "David, you're home early." "Flight landed ahead of schedule," I said, forcing a smile. I looked at Marcus, who met my eyes with the same easy grin he'd worn 1,000 times before. "Marcus, didn't expect to see you here. Just dropped by to discuss the Nakamura deal," he said smoothly. "Jessica was kind enough to offer me a drink while I waited for you." Lies. All lies. But I played along. "How's it looking?" We talked business for 30 minutes. I watched them carefully, every glance, every gesture. They were good. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen, I might never have suspected. But now I knew, and I couldn't unknow it. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I hired a private investigator. I installed hidden cameras. I went through Jessica's phone while she showered. And what I discovered was worse than simple adultery. Marcus wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was systematically stealing from our company. For 18 months, he'd been siphoning money into offshore accounts, falsifying records, setting up shell corporations. And Jessica, my Jessica, who I'd put through law school, who I'd trusted with every part of my heart, had been helping him. The Nakamura deal? It was their exit strategy. Once it closed, they planned to trigger a clause in our partnership agreement that would force me out, taking a settlement while they kept the company and the Japanese contracts worth $30 million. I felt like I was drowning in ice water. The confrontation came on a Thursday night. I laid the evidence out on our dining room table: photographs, bank statements, encrypted emails my PI had recovered, video footage. Jessica walked in from her yoga class, glowing and beautiful, and stopped dead when she saw the papers. "David." Her voice cracked. "How long?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her face told me everything. "Why?" "You don't understand," she whispered. "Marcus and we just connect in ways that you and I never could. And the business, David, you were never going to be ambitious enough. Marcus saw potential you were too scared to reach for. So you decided to steal from me? To destroy everything we built. We were going to give you fair compensation." "Faye." I laughed, and it sounded hollow even to my ears. "You call betraying me Faye?" She drew herself up, and I saw a coldness in her eyes I'd never seen before. "I want a divorce." "You'll get one," I said, "but it won't be on your terms." That's when Marcus walked in. He had a key to our house, another betrayal I'd discovered, and everything exploded. He tried to spin it, to charm me, to convince me we could all be civilized about this. When I refused, he threatened me. "You take this to court, David, and I'll bury you. I've got lawyers you can't afford. I've documented every mistake you've made in the business. By the time I'm done, you will be lucky to have a job delivering pizzas." I looked at the man I'd considered my brother and felt nothing but contempt. "Get out of my house." "It's half mine," Jessica said coldly. "Everything here is half mine." And she was right. Despite the prenup I'd foolishly waived in a moment of romantic idealism, New York's equitable distribution laws meant she could claim half of everything. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Sandra Kim, laid it out bleakly. Fighting would cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees, take years, and I might still lose. Sometimes, Sandra said, you have to lose the battle to win the war. So I gave Jessica the divorce she wanted. I let Marcus buy me out of the company for a fraction of what it was worth. I signed papers that made me feel like I was cutting out my own heart. Jessica kept the brownstone, the BMW, most of our savings. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Queens, watching my old life recede in the rearview mirror. My friends took sides. Most chose Jessica and Marcus. They were the glamorous couple now, the success story, while I was the bitter ex-husband who couldn't let go. My parents, immigrants who'd sacrificed everything for my education, were devastated. My father didn't speak to me for a month, convinced I'd somehow failed as a man. I fell into depression. Dark, suffocating days where getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. I lost 20 pounds, stopped returning calls, sat in my apartment watching the city lights and wondering if this was all my life would ever be. But on the worst night, the night I seriously considered whether life was worth continuing, something in me shifted. I remembered something my grandmother used to say: the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. I'd been broken, but I didn't have to stay broken. I started rebuilding slowly. First, I took a job at a small consulting firm, humiliating after running my own company, but it paid the bills. Then I started going to therapy. Dr. Patricia Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who didn't let me wallow. "You're not a victim," she told me in our third session. "You're a survivor. Start acting like it." She was right. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I'd forgotten what I still had: my mind, my skills, my determination. And I had something else: questions. The more I thought about Marcus and Jessica's betrayal, the more things didn't add up. Marcus had always been ambitious, But criminal fraud? Jessica had been raised by a judge, had always been almost obsessively ethical. How had they both crossed that line? I couldn't let it go. Maybe I should have. Maybe a healthier person would have moved on. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I kept returning to the same questions. What if there was more to the story? What if the evidence I'd found was only the surface? I called my old PI, Robert Chen, no relation, despite the shared last name. Robert was former NYPD, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a talent for finding things people wanted hidden. I thought we were done, he said when I met him at a diner in Flushing. So did I. But something's bothering me. I laid out my questions. Robert listened, drinking black coffee and eating pie, occasionally nodding. You want me to keep digging into your ex and your former partner, he said finally. David, I gotta ask, is this healthy? You're divorced. They are together. Sometimes the story is just what it looks like. Maybe, but what if it's not? Robert sighed. You're paying. I'll dig. What he found over the next 2 months was stunning. Marcus Wellington wasn't who he claimed to be. The picture-perfect backstory, Stanford MBA, old Virginia money, successful startup exits, was mostly fabrication. Robert traced him to a series of failed ventures and questionable business deals spanning from Seattle to Miami. He'd changed his name twice. He had outstanding judgments against him in 3 states. But it was the woman that made everything click into place. Her name was Melissa Park, and 5 years ago, she'd been engaged to Marcus. They'd run a real estate investment company together in Portland. According to Melissa, who Robert tracked down to a suburb of Seattle, Marcus had been charming, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. He convinced me to forge documents, Melissa told Robert in a recorded interview. Said it was just creative accounting, that everyone did it. By the time I realized how deep we were, it was too late. When the SEC started investigating, Marcus disappeared. Left me holding the bag. Melissa had served 18 months in federal prison. She'd lost everything. Her career, her reputation, her family's trust. Marcus had vanished, re-emerged under a new identity, and built a fresh history. And now he was doing it again. With Jessica. With my company. I sat in my apartment, listening to Robert's recording, and felt something ignite in my chest. Not quite anger. Something colder. More focused. Justice. There's more, Robert said. The Nakamura deal? It's not what Marcus told you. I've got a contact in their New York office. The contract has clauses you never saw, kickbacks, exclusivity agreements that violate antitrust laws, penalties that could bankrupt the company if certain benchmarks aren't met. Marcus structured it to implode within 2 years. Why would he do that? Insurance fraud? Probably. Tank the company, collect on the policies, then disappear again. It's his pattern. My blood ran cold. Jessica has no idea. Probably not. From what I can tell, she thinks she's going to be the wife of a successful tech CEO. She doesn't realize she's dating a con man. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Jessica had betrayed me. Yes, but she was also walking into a trap. Robert, I said slowly, can you prove all this? Most of it, yay. The fake identity, the Portland case, the Nakamura deal irregularities. It's enough to open investigations. Maybe not enough to guarantee convictions, but enough to destroy their plans. I need more time. Don't file anything yet. Robert gave me a sharp look. David, What are you planning? I don't know yet, I admitted. But this isn't just about revenge anymore. Over the next weeks, I became obsessed. I followed leads Robert provided. I reached out to other people Marcus had burned. There were 5 I could find, from San Diego to Boston. Each told a similar story: charm, partnership, betrayal, disappearance. And I started to understand Jessica better too, through careful investigation, and one brave conversation with her sister Rachel, who'd always liked me. I learned that Jessica's perfect life hadn't been so perfect. Her father, the judge, had been having an affair. Her mother had developed a drinking problem. Jessica's need for control, for success, for the appearance of perfection, it all made a terrible kind of sense. Marcus had seen her vulnerabilities and exploited them, just as he'd exploited mine. The wedding invitation arrived 3 months after our divorce was finalized. Heavy cream cardstock with elegant calligraphy: Jessica Hartley and Marcus Wellington request the honor of your presence. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called Robert. I need you to find one more person, I said. Melissa Park. I need her to come to New York. David. Trust me. The Plaza Hotel's ballroom was a symphony of white and gold. Jessica had always dreamed of getting married here. We'd walked past it once during our engagement, and she'd said wistfully that maybe someday, if we renewed our vows. Now she was having that dream wedding. Just not with me. I wasn't officially invited, of course, but I had my ways. A substantial tip to a catering company employee got me a server's uniform. I kept to the shadows, watching the ceremony from behind a pillar. Jessica looked breathtaking. For a moment, seeing her walk down the aisle in her flowing dress, I felt the old ache. This had been supposed to be us, forever. But then I saw Marcus's face as he watched her approach, and I knew. I'd seen that look before, on his face when he'd closed a particularly profitable deal. He didn't love her. She was just another mark. The ceremony was brief. They exchanged vows, traditional ones, nothing personal. Jessica's voice wavered slightly when she said, "I do." I wondered if she was thinking of me, of what she'd given up. Then the reception began, and I went to work. I'd spent weeks planning this moment. Melissa Park had arrived in New York the day before. I'd met with her twice, explaining everything. She'd been hesitant at first. Confronting Marcus meant reliving trauma. But when I showed her what he was planning to do to Jessica, to the company, to the dozens of employees who'd lose their jobs, something hardened in her eyes. "He can't keep doing this," she'd said. "He has to be stopped." Now she was here, dressed elegantly, blending in with the guests. We'd timed it perfectly. The speeches were ending. Marcus was standing, preparing to toast his new bride. That's when Melissa walked up to their table. I was close enough to see everything. Jessica was laughing at something Marcus had said, her face flushed with champagne and happiness. Then she looked up and saw the woman approaching. "Congratulations," Melissa said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Though I'm surprised you're using the name Marcus Wellington. Last time I knew you, you were going by Markwells." The color drained from Marcus's face. "I'm sorry. I think you have me confused with Portland, Oregon. 5 years ago. We were engaged, remember? Before you framed me for fraud and sent me to federal prison." The nearby conversations died. Guests turned to stare. Jessica stood up slowly. "What is she talking about?" "This woman is clearly disturbed," Marcus said smoothly, signaling security. "Someone call." "I have documents," Melissa said, pulling a folder from her purse. Court records, SEC filings, pictures of us together, back when you had different hair and a different name. And I'm not the only one. She gestured, and two other people stood up from the crowd, a man from San Diego and a woman from Boston. Two of Marcus's other victims, whom I'd convinced to come. You did the same thing to me in San Diego, the man said. Stole from our company, left me with the debts. And me in Boston, the woman added. I lost my family's business because of you. Jessica was staring at Marcus, her face pale as death. Marcus, what is this? They are lying, he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Baby, these are clearly people David paid to. David? Jessica's voice was sharp. What does David have to do with this? Your ex-husband has been stalking us, Marcus said desperately. He can't accept that you've moved on. His hired actors, too. These aren't actors, I said, stepping out from behind the pillar. Every head turned. I pulled off the server's jacket, revealing my suit underneath. Jessica's eyes went wide. David, she whispered. I'm sorry to crash your wedding, I said, walking toward the head table. But you need to know who you just married. I pulled out my own folder, copies of everything Robert had found, the fake identities, the criminal history, the pattern of fraud, the details of the Nakamura deal and how it was designed to fail. His real name is Mark Edmund Wells, I said. He's a con man. He's done this at least 5 times that I can find. And he was planning to do it to you, Jessica. The company would have collapsed within 2 years. You'd have been left with nothing, or worse, facing criminal charges. Marcus lunged at me, but hotel security, the real security, whom I'd alerted beforehand, intercepted him. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests were standing, phones out, filming. Marcus was shouting, struggling against the security guards. And Jessica just stood there, frozen, as her perfect wedding shattered around her. Police arrived within minutes. I'd contacted them beforehand, too, providing evidence of Marcus's fraud. They arrested him right there in the ballroom, still in his wedding tuxedo. He was screaming about lawyers, about false accusations, but his eyes found mine for one moment, and I saw recognition there. He knew he was finished. The media frenzy lasted for weeks. Tech CEO revealed as serial con man on wedding day ran in the New York Times. Every news outlet wanted the story. Marcus's face was everywhere, and so was mine, the ex-husband who saved his former wife. I hated the attention, but Jessica hated it more. She called me 3 days after the wedding. I almost didn't answer. What was left to say? But something made me pick up. David. Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the confident woman I'd known. Can we meet? We met at a coffee shop in Manhattan, neutral territory. She looked exhausted, wearing no makeup, her hair pulled back simply. She'd been crying. I don't know what to say, she began. Then don't say anything. I'm so sorry. The words burst out of her. David, I'm so sorry. You tried to tell me, and I didn't listen. I thought you were just bitter. I thought I'd found someone better. Someone who understood my ambitions in ways you didn't. He understood your vulnerabilities, I said quietly. That's different. She flinched. I know that now. I've been going through everything, the company records, the financial statements. He was stealing from us the whole time. And I helped him. I actually helped him steal from you. Why? It was the question I'd wanted to ask for months. Why did you do it, Jessica? We had a good life. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. My parents' marriage was falling apart, and I couldn't fix it. My career was stalling. I was a corporate lawyer doing contract reviews, not the litigator I dreamed of being. I felt stuck, like I was living someone else's life. She looked up at me with red eyes, and then Marcus came along, and he made me feel special, important, like I could be more than I was. He said you were holding me back, that you were too cautious, too satisfied with mediocrity. So you believed him. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that there was a version of my life that was more. Does that make sense? It did, painfully. What are you going to do now? I don't know. My name is attached to all of this. The fraud, the scandal. No law firm will touch me. My parents are barely speaking to me. They are mortified. And the company. She laughed bitterly. The company is in shambles. The Nakamura deal is off. We're facing lawsuits. Everything we built is falling apart. I should have felt satisfaction. This was justice, wasn't it? But looking at her broken face, I felt only sadness. You need a good lawyer, I said finally. I can't afford one. Marcus cleaned out our accounts before the wedding. I'm broke, David. Completely broke. Sandra Kim owes me a favor. I'll call her. Jessica stared at me. Why would you help me? After everything I did to you? Because you're not a criminal, I said. You were manipulated by someone who's very good at manipulation. And because... I paused, searching for the right words. Because I loved you once. That means something. She started crying then, really crying. I handed her napkins and waited until she composed herself. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not, I agreed. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because it's who I want to be. The legal aftermath took months. Marcus, or Mark, his real name, was charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. Evidence I'd helped gather was crucial to the prosecution. Melissa Park testified. So did the other victims. He went to trial 8 months after the disastrous wedding. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery, watching the man who destroyed my life get what he deserved. He was convicted on 14 counts and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. I felt no triumph when the verdict was read, just a quiet sense of closure. Jessica, with Sandra's help, cut a deal with prosecutors. She testified against Marcus, admitted her role in the scheme, and agreed to cooperate fully with authorities. In exchange, she received probation and community service. She lost her law license but avoided prison. The company, Chen Wellington Tech Solutions, was in ruins. Most of the staff had been laid off. The Nakamura deal was dead. Creditors were circling. The obvious move was to liquidate, but I couldn't let it die. Not like this. I approached Robert Chen with an idea. How much would it cost to buy back the company? He laughed. You serious? You'd be buying a corpse. A corpse with good bones. The technology is solid. The client relationships, the ones Marcus didn't poison, are still there. It could work. You got that kind of money? No, but I know people who might. I spent 3 months putting together investors, former colleagues, a venture capital firm that believed in the core technology, even my parents, who mortgaged their house to help me. It was insane and risky and probably doomed to fail. But it worked. I bought back the company for 30 cents on the dollar. renamed it Chen Innovation Solutions, hired back the employees who wanted to return, started pitching new clients, and slowly, painfully, we rebuilt. The first year was brutal. 100-hour weeks, living on coffee and determination. There were times I wanted to quit, to walk away and do something easier. But every time I felt that way, I remembered standing in that plaza ballroom, watching everything fall apart, and I pushed forward. By the end of year 2, we were profitable. By year 3, we'd landed a major contract with a Japanese firm, not Nakamura, but one of their competitors. By year 4, we were expanding. Jessica and I maintained a distant but cordial relationship. She'd gotten a job with a non-profit legal clinic, helping people who couldn't afford representation. It was humbling work, far from the glamorous career she'd once imagined, but she seemed genuinely content. "I'm learning who I actually am," she told me once over coffee, one of our occasional check-ins. "Not who I wanted people to think I was. It's harder but more honest." "I'm glad," I said, and meant it. She'd been dating someone, a teacher, nothing like Marcus or me. "His kind," she said simply. "That matters more than I realized." As for me, I'd started dating too. Her name was Amy Liu, and she worked in software development at a startup in Brooklyn. She was funny, brilliant, and refreshingly direct. When I told her my story, she'd listen quietly and then said, "So you're telling me you're a hero who saved your company and your ex-wife from a con man?" "That's not how I'd put it." "Well, that's how I'm putting it. You want another drink?" I liked her immediately. 2 years after the disastrous wedding, I got a call from the federal prosecutor who'd handled Marcus's case. "Mr. Chen, I thought you'd want to know. Mark Wells is up for parole review." My stomach dropped. Already? He's been a model prisoner. First-time offender. Technically. His lawyers arguing he's rehabilitated. I thought about Melissa Park, serving 18 months for crimes Marcus had orchestrated. I thought about all his victims, the lives he'd destroyed. "He'll do it again," I said. "If he gets out, he'll find new victims." "I know. That's why we're asking victims to submit impact statements. I was hoping you'd be willing." I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to be done with Marcus, to leave him in the past where he belonged. But I thought about the next person he might target, the next Jessica who might fall for his charm. I wrote the statement. So did Melissa. So did the others. Marcus's parole was denied. The news came on a Friday evening. I was in the office late, reviewing contracts, when Amy called. "Did you hear?" she asked. "I did." "How do you feel?" "Tired," I admitted. "But good. Like I can finally close this chapter." "Then come home. I'm making dinner." Home. Amy and I had moved in together 6 months earlier, a sleek apartment in Dumbo with views of the Brooklyn Bridge. It still startled me sometimes, realizing I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. I shut down my computer and headed out. The office, our new space in a renovated warehouse in Williamsburg, was bustling with activity even at 7 p.m. Young engineers working on projects they believed in. A sales team closing deals. An operations manager who kept everything running smoothly. This was what I'd built from the ashes of my old life. Something better. Something mine. I stopped by Jessica's non-profit on the way home. She'd left a message asking me to swing by. I found her in her small, cluttered office, surrounded by case files. "Hey," she said, looking up. "Thanks for coming." "What's up?" She handed me an envelope. I wanted to give you this in person. I opened it. Inside was a check, a substantial check. What's this? My settlement from the lawsuit against Marcus's estate, she explained. The court liquidated his assets, what little he had that wasn't stolen or hidden. This is my share, but it should be yours. I tried to hand it back. Jessica, please. Her voice was firm. I can't undo what I did to you, but I can do this. It's not about the money. It's about trying to make things right. I looked at the check, then at her. Her face was open, honest, free of the hardness that had defined her during our divorce. Thank you, I said simply. Thank you, she replied, for everything. For exposing Marcus. For helping me get a good lawyer. For not hating me when you had every right to. I never hated you, I said. I was angry, hurt, betrayed, but I never hated you. She smiled, a real smile. You're a good man, David Chen. I'm sorry it took me so long to appreciate that. We talked for a while longer about her cases, about my company, about our separate lives that occasionally intersected. When I left, I felt lighter than I had in years. At home, Amy had made her specialty, a Thai curry that filled the apartment with the smell of lemongrass and coconut. We ate on the balcony, watching the sunset over Manhattan, and I told her about my day. Do you think Jessica's really changed? Amy asked. I think she's trying to, I said. That's all any of us can do. What about you? Have you changed? I thought about the person I'd been before the divorce, naive, trusting, maybe too passive. And the person I'd become, stronger, more cautious, but also more empathetic. Yeah, I said. I think I have. Good, Amy said, leaning against me, because I like who you are now. That night, lying in bed with Amy asleep beside me, I thought about the journey from that terrible Tuesday evening when I'd discovered the betrayal to this moment of quiet contentment. It hadn't been the path I'd chosen, but it had led me somewhere good. My phone buzzed with a message from Robert Chen. Thought you'd want to know. Melissa Park just opened her own business consulting firm. She's using her prison experience to help companies improve ethics compliance. She says you inspired her. I smiled in the darkness. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't about destroying your enemies. It was about building something so good, so true, so meaningful that their betrayal became irrelevant. It was about becoming a person you could respect. I'd lost a wife, a business partner, a company, and years of my life. But I'd gained something more valuable, myself. And that was the best revenge of all. The invitation was simple, cream cardstock with elegant lettering. You are cordially invited to the wedding of David Chen and Amy Liu. I was getting married. For real this time. To someone who knew all my scars and loved me anyway. We were having a small ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, nothing like the Plaza spectacle, just 50 close friends and family. Among the responses was one that surprised me. I'd be honored to attend. Congratulations on your happiness, Jessica. Amy raised an eyebrow when I showed her. Your ex-wife wants to come to our wedding. Would that bother you? She considered it. Actually, no. She's part of your story. And your story made you who you are. On the day of our wedding, the garden was perfect. Cherry blossoms in bloom, sunlight streaming through leaves, the quiet murmur of a stream. My parents were there, beaming with pride. Amy's family had flown in from California. Robert Chen served as one of my groomsmen along with colleagues from the new company. And Jessica came with her boyfriend Greg, and she looked genuinely happy for me. After the ceremony, she approached me during the reception. "Congratulations," she said, and I heard no bitterness, no regret in her voice. Just warmth. "Thank you for coming and for the gift." She'd sent a beautiful set of vintage whiskey glasses. "You deserve all the happiness, David. I mean that. So do you." She glanced at Greg, who was chatting with Amy's brother. "I think I'm getting there. It's slower, messier than I expected. But it's real. That's all that matters." She hesitated, then said, "I saw that Chen Innovation Solutions landed the Anderson contract. That's huge." "It is. We're growing faster than I expected." "You rebuilt everything," she said quietly. "You took the worst thing that happened to you and turned it into something amazing. I admire that." "I had help, and I had a reason to fight." "What was the reason?" I looked across the garden at Amy, laughing with my mother, radiant in her wedding dress. "I wanted to prove that good things can come from bad beginnings," I said. "That you can be betrayed and survive. That you can lose everything and build something better." Jessica smiled. "You did prove it. Thank you, David, for showing me that too." She hugged me, a brief, friendly hug, and then returned to Greg. I watched her go, feeling nothing but peace. Amy appeared at my elbow. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I said, pulling her close. "Even with your ex-wife here. Especially with her here. It means the past is really past." We danced as the sun set, surrounded by people who loved us, in a garden that smelled of flowers and new beginnings. My company was thriving. My relationship was real and deep and honest. I'd faced the worst betrayal of my life and come out stronger. Marcus was in prison, where he belonged. Jessica was rebuilding her life with integrity. Melissa and the other victims were moving forward. And I was here, dancing with the woman I loved in a life I'd built from scratch. The story could have ended in bitterness and rage. Instead, it ended in a garden with cherry blossoms falling like snow and a future bright with possibility. That guest at Jessica's wedding, Melissa Park, with her courage to speak truth, had indeed turned Jessica pale. But she'd also set in motion a chain of events that freed us all. Sometimes the worst moments crack us open so the light can get in. I'd been broken, but I'd also been remade. And that, I realized as I held Amy and felt the warmth of the setting sun, was the greatest gift of all.